test broadcast here on the StreamYard software. I think I figured out the screen sharing. If you watched the last Cerucci team brief we did yesterday on August 4th, my screen was just up on the StreamYard chat, but I figured out how to share the whole screen. I believe I did, so I'm going to test that out this video. I'm still learning the ropes with this new software, but I wanted to show visuals when I was talking about a bit on the last stream yesterday on members of Felix Morlion's Pro-DO subsidiary. Okay, and this is, hopefully you guys can see this. But this is another test run. I'm thinking you guys will be able to see the screen here. But this is from an archive.org page. I merged a bunch of documents that I found on Pro-DO into one document. See, I titled this "Another Pro-DO Pamphlet and More Declassified Documents on Pro-DO, including letters from Father Felix Morlion to Hugh Thant, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations." But I just wanted to show you here. You can see the screen here. The American Council for International Promotion of Democracy under God, also known as the CIP, Incorporated. So you're the chairman of the board. You have Henry Luce. Henry Luce was a skull and bonesman. Right here, he was known as the most influential private citizen in America of his day. Skull and bonesman Henry Luce had a wife who was a Dame of Malta, Claire Booth Luce, who was also the United States ambassador to Italy. She became the U.S. ambassador to Italy after she converted to Roman Catholicism. And it was Claire Booth Luce that recruited the Jesuit Robert Blair Kaiser to Time magazine, interestingly. And you see here, Robert Blair Kaiser was very close with C.D. Jackson at Time magazine. And you see C.D. Jackson is on the board of directors here at Pro-DO, if you guys can see the screen. Okay, I think the screen is sharing there. Okay, so I just wanted to go through some of the boards of directors and show you who is affiliated with this group, because it's very interesting to see who is actually affiliated with this group. Here, the president, you got J. Peter Grace. J. Peter Grace was the president of Father Felix Morlion's American subsidiary. J. Peter Grace, like I mentioned on the last show, personally brought the Nazi Otto Ambrose into the United States. J. Peter Grace was also in charge of the Grace Committee, which was all about socialism for the rich under Reaganomics. Reaganomics cut programs for the poor and gave it tax breaks to the rich. That's basically what it was. I have this on my channel, but this is, you can see the actual video of Ronald Reagan speaking at the Knights of Malta dinner. And this is J. Peter Grace right here. That's J. Peter Grace. He was the president of the Knights of Malta. Ronald Reagan refers to him as Mr. President in this speech. You see, J. Peter Grace was the president of Pro-DO. You can see him right there. And so I'm just going to go through, and then you see here the vice president is Paul Felix Warburg. Paul Felix Warburg is a descendant of the Jewish Warburg banking family. So why is there a Jewish banker affiliated with this? Why is there a Jewish? Actually, this is the wrong Felix Warburg. Paul Felix. I found this guy's obituary. He was the son of Felix M. Warburg. Give me a second here. So Paul Felix Warburg was one of the vice presidents of the Roman Catholic Pro-DO subsidiary in the U.S. Yeah, this was his obituary here. He looks like he died in 1965. Okay, this was it here. Yeah, so this is the Paul Felix Warburg that was affiliated with Pro-DO right here. Funeral services we held here for the Templeman at the Temple Emmanuel for Paul Felix Warburg, a member of the prominent Jewish family of financiers and philanthropists, who died in New York yesterday at the age of 61. The son of the late Felix M. Warburg, founder and the first president of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies of Greater New York, Paul Felix Warburg is one of the Federation's active leaders for many years and was credited with having led in the developing of the Federation's highly successful fundraising methods, according to Irving M. Flett, president of the Federation. Paul Felix Warburg was also on the board of trustees of the Jewish Board of Guardians and a founder of the Federation's Employment and Guidance Services. Among Paul Felix Warburg survivors are, so you see his family here. Actually, and here's a Sarnov, Mrs. Robert Sarnov. That's interesting because General David Sarnov was a big papal court Jew who was working for the Radio Corporation of America. David Sarnov got the Radio Corporation of America to invest into the Soviet Union. And then a few years later, David Sarnov recommended that Frank M. Folsom, a high papal knight, Jesuit-trained Bohemian Club member, become chairman of the board of Radio Corporation of America. That's interesting. And actually, Frank Folsom is on, if you can see my screen here, hopefully you guys can. You can see Frank Folsom's name here right below James Farley. James Farley is another prominent name. James Farley was the head of the DNC when Franklin Roosevelt got elected. James Farley was known, Knight of Malta. James Farley is known as Roosevelt's political kingmaker. James Farley also then became the Postmaster General and then became the chairman of Coca-Cola Export International. James Farley was chairman of Coke, the Knight of Malta, when the coup d'etat in Guatemala took place with the United Fruit Company, because the United Fruit Company was the official bottler of Coke in Guatemala. But another interesting Jewish connection, I'm just going to say, you see a few papal court Jews are affiliated with this group. So you have Paul Felix Warburg here, and this guy Alan M. Struck was another papal court Jew. You can see I have his New York Times obituary up here. Alan Struck, he died in 1985, 77, lawyer and Jewish. This guy was a Jewish leader, is dead. Here, Alan Struck, a retired senior partner in the New York law firm Struck and Lavin, longtime leader in Jewish affairs. You see here, Mr. Struck specialized in Mr. Struck specialized in legal work involving wills, trusts, estates, and estate planning for many of the leading financial families in the New York financial world. So he's doing a lot of work for the Roman Catholic elite in New York. You see, that's probably, and this guy Alan Struck was a member of Father Felix Morlion's Pro Dio subsidiary. He was long active in the civic, philanthropic, literary, and educational affairs. He was the life trustee of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies. And Alan Struck was a former chairman of the board and president of the Corporation of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. He was also a life trustee of New York University. He was a founder of Commentary magazine, which was published by the American Jewish Committee. So very interesting. So this Alan M. Struck here, very involved in the Jewish community, a banker, had his own law firm. And you see here, he was on the list. You see right here, he's above Charles H. Tuttle, right here, Alan M. Struck. Let me see. Oh, hey, Solus. Can you see my screen, Solus? Or is it stuck on the? Because the last time I tried doing this on StreamYard, it was stuck on this screen right here. Just let me know if you can see the. I have it set up where you guys can see me hopefully and my screen. But let me know if you can see these documents. This is the document I wanted to show on the show yesterday on August 4th, but I didn't get my screen share to work. I just want to show you some of the guys, because this is this intelligence network, and you can see Reverend Father Felix A. Morlion right here. This is a very prominent intelligence network that Father Morlion set up. I have this guy's obituary up here. You see right below Henry Luce, you got T. Murray McDonald. T. Murray McDonald was a Roman Catholic financier in New York. You see T. Murray McDonald was chairman of McDonald and Company from 1951 until the Wall Street brokerage house went out of business in 1970. He died in 1991. T.M. McDonald spent his entire career with the brokerage house, which was founded in 1903 by his father, James. His mother, the former Anna Murray, was the daughter of Thomas E. Murray, the inventor and holder of many electrical patents. And this is key. Actually, I covered this. I'll show you. Thomas. This should come up on. I read a post should come up here when I type this in. Okay, here it is. But this T. Murray MacDonald is a descendant of this papal knight Thomas Murray. His mother was the daughter of Thomas Murray, T. Murray MacDonald. This Thomas E. Murray, though, you see the quote is from, if you can, hopefully you can see this. This is I linked this book, and this is on my archive.org page, but in this blog post I linked everything. Thomas E. Murray, you see, was made a Knight of St. Gregory and Knight of Malta, two of the most prestigious orders during World War I. Meanwhile, his invention for welding shells was found to be the only one that could be used in the production of 240 millimeter mortar shell, which earned him, in addition to another fortune in government contracts, a special commendation from the War Department. So this T. Murray MacDonald is a descendant of this Thomas E. Murray, and Thomas E. Murray was a devout Catholic, member of the Irish Catholic aristocracy. And this T. Murray MacDonald, interestingly, he went to Jesuit Georgetown University, served in the army in France during World War II. And you see he became chairman of MacDonald in 1951. And then the SEC actually went after this guy, T.M. MacDonald, for, it says here, mingling of funds and violating rules on bookkeeping and capital requirements. So this guy was probably laundering money, for Father Felix Morlion. It says he was barred from taking a managerial position as a securities dealer, but in 1973, devout Catholic T. Murray MacDonald, Jesuit trained, was able to join Allen and Company, where he served until his death as a vice president handling foreign business. Yeah, he was probably laundering money for Morlion in that role as in handling foreign business at Allen and Company. This guy was on the list here. Actually, I'll go to my New York. I have a bunch of these guys' obituaries in the New York Times. I'll load these up here. So, just taking a second. Okay, New York Times. Okay, here's another one here. This Charles H. Tuttle was on the board. I'll show you him. Oh, it's open. Okay, here's Tuttle. So this guy was on the board of Morlion's group here. He was a civic leader, apparently. This is his New York Times obituary. Charles H. Tuttle, civic leader for many years, dies at 91. You see here, Charles H. Tuttle, a leader in law, education, and religion, here for 6 days, died yesterday at the Flower and Fifth Hospital. He was 91. Let me see here. He was a Republican. He ran for so this guy ran to Franklin D. Roosevelt in the New York election in 1930. And actually, this guy was an Episcopalian. He was very ecumenical. It's Charles H. Tuttle. He's a New York governor, or ran for New York governor against FDR. And actually, the guy who got FDR elected, James A. Farley, was a member of the Pro-Dio subsidiary in America, like Charles H. Tuttle. Talk about control. These years, his grandfather was a rector in the Episcopal Church for over 40 years. He was Charles H. Tuttle appointed trustee of City College in 1913, where he served successive reappointment until 1926, where he set up the city's board of higher education, which took over responsibility for the college. So this guy was very involved in City College. 1926, Charles Tuttle served on the State Reorganization Commission, recommending the changes in departments under amendments in the state constitution voted in 1925. That's the state of New York. President Calvin Coolidge in 1927 appointed Charles H. Tuttle the United States Attorney for the New York Southern District, a post he held until he ran for governor in 1930. Supposedly, his most important investigations were against political corruption, but that's not true. I guarantee you that's not true. That's gaslighting. But you see here, he was a unpaid general counsel to the National Council of Churches. So Morlion's group. So Charles H. Tuttle is the connection to the federal and national councils of churches to Pro-Dio. So it's a way for Pro-Dio to infiltrate and find out, all the details of what's going on in the national and federal council of churches. And this guy, and Charles Tuttle, he led up this. He was very big into ecumenism. led an interfaith group. Charles H. Tuttle was a past president of the Protestant Council and Brotherhood in Action, an interfaith group, and he has been a trustee of the International Council of Religious Education and a member of the Executive Committee of United Neighborhood Houses. And this is key because Father Felix Morlion was very big in the Vatican II, which is the ecumenical movement, like everyone coming together. I read in the quote from Norman Cousins' book how Morlion wanted to create like a world citizen, or he wanted to create like a world democracy, like a one world government, basically. We see in 1945, interestingly, on instance of the Greek Orthodox prelate who is now an ecumenical patriarch, Athenagoras. Actually, this is the ecumenical patriarch who met with the Knight of Malta, Myron C. Taylor, in Greece in the Second World War. Wow, interesting. That information's in Aber Manhattan's book, Catholic Imperialism and World Freedom. Charles Tuttle received the highest Greek Orthodox honor for a layman, the Grand Cross of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. That's interesting there. Yeah, this guy was very, very involved in ecumenism. I'll show you a picture of this guy. There's this photo here. Yeah, look, even on Wikipedia, Charles H. Tuttle, active in the Episcopal Church, he worked to advance tolerances and ecumenical unity with Catholic and Jewish leaders, as leader of the Greater New York Federation of Churches. Yeah, so this was a big, interesting connection to Morlion's intelligence group. Oh yeah, you guys can see him? Okay, perfect. I haven't watched True Detective yet. I've heard it's a good show, especially the first season with McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. I haven't watched that show, but I should check it out. Here's another guy. So I'm glad you guys are able to see the audio. That's encouraging. Actually, this one's big here. I covered this guy. I did a whole blog post on this guy, but the former governor of New York, Nelson Rockefeller's lieutenant governor, Jesuit-trained Malcolm Wilson. This guy spent 15 years with the Jesuits. Malcolm Wilson was on Father Felix Morlion's subsidiary in the United States, the American Council for an International Promotion of Democracy Under God. Previous year, Malcolm Wilson, who spent 15 years as Nelson Rockefeller's lieutenant governor, and 1 year as governor of New York, died yesterday in 2000. Malcolm Wilson went to Jesuit Fordham. The Catholic governor, George Pataki, yesterday described Mr. Wilson as a wonderful human being. Oh, what a surprise. You see here, Malcolm Wilson went to Jesuit Fordham University. He was on the debating team at Jesuit Fordham, among many others. But look at this. So in 1958, this is from the New York Times. The Jesuit-educated Malcolm Wilson threw in his lot with Mr. Rockefeller, that's Nelson Rockefeller, scion of the nation's wealth of his family, who had never before run for office. Mr. Wilson became a political tour guide of sorts, driving Mr. Rockefeller about the state to introduce him to local chieftains eager for a fresh candidate. Quietly, in the just of the two of them, they made rounds in Mr. Wilson's own car in order not to flaunt the novice's immense wealth. Mr. Wilson sold his man, that being Nelson Rockefeller, who then insisted that Mr. Wilson be chosen as his running mate. Would you look at that? So this guy was like the handler of Nelson Rockefeller. Got Nelson Rockefeller into politics. Jesuit-trained Governor Malcolm Wilson. And you see here he's on the pro-Dio list right at the bottom. I'll zoom in. You can see that's Malcolm. That's the Malcolm Wilson that they're referring to. Right there, he's right under Paul Felix Warburg, which I've mentioned. I mentioned this guy, Charles Tuttle, the ecumenist. I mentioned this guy already, the Jewish financier, Alan M. Strzok. Okay, there's Felix Morlion. I mentioned Henry Luce. I mentioned C.D. Jackson. This guy here, I'll go to this guy here, Eric Johnston. This is very interesting because Eric Johnston, I think it was another Episcopalian like Charles Tuttle. But Myron C. Taylor, the FDR's, Franklin Roosevelt's personal ambassador to the Vatican, Myron Taylor was a Knight of Malta, but also an Episcopalian. Myron Taylor was also the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations for like 15 years. That's a key post, and he was the CEO of United Steel. But you see here, this Eric Johnson, he was president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the Republican Party, and he was president of the Motion Picture Association of America. He took over after the Episcopalian Will Hayes was in charge, and all you got to do is read the memoirs of Will Hayes to see how controlled Will Hayes was by the Pope. Like he even says, like, Pope Pius XI sent Will Hayes a letter telling him to go ahold and get this cinema. Go, the letter was like, go get. Oh, what was it exactly? The Pope said to Will Hayes, like, get a hold and get a grip on like the cinema of the world, or something like that. Will Hayes like actually talks about Pro Deo in his own memoirs, and actually that's right here. If you can see on the screen, this is what Will Hayes wrote in his memoirs, and I link this blog post in the description of this video, and you can get Will Hayes' memoirs. Will Hayes says, quite frankly, right here, the reason the Pope came to the United States, or Eugenio Pacelli came to the United States, that being future Pius XII, in 1936, the reason being was the Pro Deo movement. So interesting stuff. Actually, I found this interesting. Where was this here? There's this Google book I found. I typed in, this was the name of Father Felix Morlion's subsidiary, the American Council for International Promotion of Democracy Under God. And this book here, Freedom's War, the U.S. Crusade Against the Soviet Union by Scott Lucas, claims that Morlion's fund was getting CIA money. Or actually, let me read this here. He actually claims the CIA, the Catholic Intelligence Agency money was funneled to the Communist Daily Worker. Would you look at that? Because the agency, quote, wanted to know where our enemy was. No, that's because in reality, the Communist Daily Worker was a Jesuit CIA operation. One of the main guys that they planted in the Communist Party was Jesuit-trained Louis Buttons, Roman Catholic. Louis Buttons was a devout Roman Catholic, then he became a communist, and then he went back to being a devout Roman Catholic. And the accusation for this guy being a Jesuit came from James J. Murphy, the ex-Benedictine priest who wrote in the Converted Catholic magazine. The particular issue is January 1946 in the Converted Catholic magazine. J.J. Murphy says it's more likely that Louis Buttons was a lay Jesuit who was planted into the Communist Party. And after he left the Communist Party, he became a professor of economics at the Catholic University of Notre Dame, and then later taught at Jesuit Fordham University. So, and if you read the FBI and the Catholic Church by Steve Rossum, that the FBI was in regular contact with Louis Buttons. So it's interesting that the CIA was funding the CIA was funneling money into the Communist Daily Worker. But this author says that a spiritual offensive was conducted via the Pax Romana, the International Catholic Youth Federation, and the interdenominational organization Pro Deo, also known as the American Council for the International Promotion of Democracy Under God. You see here, CIA funds supported groups as. So he's making the claim, the CIA was moving funds into Morlion's organization, and actually the organization, or the accusation for Morlion actually being a CIA agent comes from the Jesuit priest Robert Graham in an Italian article called "The Pious Friar Working for the CIA" in the Repubblica. Father Graham said, yes, Father Felix Morlion was from the CIA, and he was a big point of reference for American intelligence. And actually, here's another list. So this guy on the list here I found was actually a connection to the CIA, was the Stephen de Bruhl. Okay, Stephen de Bruhl. This guy was in Morlion's intelligence group. This is his obituary, I think, from the New York Times. He died in 2012, the Stephen de Bruhl. See here, Stephen de Bruhl attended Catholic Notre Dame, and then he served with the Central Intelligence Agency for 2 years of the Korean War in late 1952. If you look at that. He then went to Harvard Business School. He served in the Counterintelligence Corps. And then, interestingly, he got into the finance world. Stephen de Bruhl worked with Lehman Brothers in New York. So he was working with Lehman Brothers at the time of this document here from Morlion's American Council for the International Promotion of Democracy Under God. But here's Stephen de Bruhl right here above James Farley. Here, Stephen de Bruhl was a CIA agent serving in Korea. And then he worked with Lehman Brothers. Think there's some money laundering going there with Father Felix Morlion? Absolutely. And then he joined the Lazard and Frères Company after his many positions with Lehman Brothers. And then he became the president of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, which he reorganized for President Ford. Yeah, so this guy was pretty powerful. And just look at all the stuff he was affiliated with here. DeBrol had his independent counseling and private banking practice, served as a director, including of major public corporations, including the Radio Corporation of America, where Frank Folsom was chair of, RCA Corporation, NBC, Continental Can Company, Continental Group, General Dynamics Corporation, Great Northern Paper Co., Jewel Companies, R.C. Macy Co., May Department Stores Company, Acme Cleveland Corporation, the Weatherhead Company, the Midland Roscoff, the Tappan Manufacturing Company, Signals Companies Inc., Sainsbury USA Inc., Shaw's Supermarkets Inc., and the Jeffrey Company. So that's just some of the corporations Stephen DeBrol was affiliated with, the CIA agent on the board of Morlion's Prodeo subsidiary. Stephen DeBrol served in numerous professional, governmental, and philanthropic, money laundering, and academic organizations. In the early 1960s, he was a White House advisor to the Council of Economic Advisors under President Kennedy and Johnson. Interesting there. He was treasurer and chairman of the Visiting Nurse Service of New York, served as a trustee of the Carnegie Foundation for Advancement of Teaching and the Buckley School of New York. He's also a member of the Visiting Committee of Harvard Business School, and previously served as president of the Harvard Business School Association. Well, Harvard had the disgraced pedophile Cardinal Pell come to Harvard for moral advice a couple of years ago. You hear 1968 to 1971, Mr. DeBrol was governor of the Association of Stock Exchange Firms. In 1972 to 75, a director of the executive committee and member of the Security Industry Association. Served as a trustee of the International House and president of the Episcopal Mission Society of New York. This guy seems to be another Episcopal, it looks like, who is connected to Morlion Society, but the Stephen Mackenzie DeBrol was literally a CIA agent and, chairman of the Export-Import Bank, Lehman Brothers, just to name some of them. You can see DeBrol's right here. Actually, and here's this John. So I showed you a connection to the CIA. Here's a connection directly to the FBI that I found with Morlion's intelligence group, and it was. Give me a second. It was this John S. Bugis. You see here, this is his New York Times obituary. John S. Bugis at 74 was top executive at Ford. This guy died in 2008. This guy was apparently one of Henry Ford. Henry Ford II was actually converted to Catholicism, and he was given a Catholic medal in 1947. That's sourced in Avram Manhattan's book, The Dollar in the Vatican. Here, John S. Bugis, a retired vice president of Ford Company and one of Catholic Henry Ford II's closest friends. Catholic Henry Ford II, if you read Anthony Sutton's book, The Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development, Henry Ford II purposely went to the Soviet Union to give military-grade technology, engineering patents, and factories to the Soviets directly. And, Morlion was openly getting the Vatican into diplomatic relations with the Soviets back in the 60s, or tying getting the relationship between the Soviets and the Vatican closer. That's what Morlion's, if you read Norman Cousins' book, that's what Morlion was all about, bridging the ideological barrier between Soviet Russia and the Vatican. So it's interesting that Henry Ford II was doing treasonous behavior, giving American military weapons and technology directly to the Soviets that were used against American soldiers in the Vietnam War. So it's interesting that John S. Bugis was connected to Morlion's group and was a good friend of Henry Ford II. But you see this, John S. Bugis was an FBI agent on top of being Henry Ford II's closest friend. He served with the FBI. He joined Ford in 1944 after serving as the head of the Detroit office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, doing all sorts of gatekeeping for Father Charles Coughlin, the late Jesuit that was terrorizing Detroit. Also, the Eustachi Jesuit priest Dragutin Camber S.J., who was the chief of police in the city of Dugjoy, Bosnia, who sent thousands to their death while being chief of police. That Jesuit mass murdering psychopath Dragutin Camber S.J. was living in Detroit at this time in the 1940s when you had John S. Bugis as the head of the FBI there, the Federal Bureau of Inquisition, doubtlessly protecting and harboring Jagut and Camber. But you see here, Bugis joined Ford in 1944, served as the head of the Detroit office. He helped Mr. Ford wrest control of the company from Harry Bennett, who had been head of security for the elder Mr. Ford, who was one of the biggest anti-Semites in the history of humanity. You see here, Mr. Bugis served as a vice president of industrial relations at Ford from 1945 to 59. But here's some of his other, and actually, yes, he was appointed vice president for the company's international group and handled the company's import-export operations. That's giving all of Ford's technology and patents to the Soviets and relations with its overseas branches. In his final 3 years at Ford, John S. Bugis reported directly to Catholic Henry Ford II. You see right there at the top. And while at the FBI, John S. Bugis served in Los Angeles, Washington, Omaha, Juneau, Alaska, and Birmingham, Alabama, including Detroit. So that was a very interesting connection to the Morlion group. This is John S. Bugis. And I'll show you this guy, the guy who's writing the letter here to the Secretary General of the United Nations, John P.E. Brown. You see here he's the secretary of Morlion's group. This guy was just a layman. So, like, you know, the average layman isn't writing letters to the Secretary General of the United Nations. I'm not doing that, for instance. You know, the people in your family aren't writing letters to the Secretary General of the United Nations. So, like, this guy, you know, is in the big boys club here, John P.E. Brown. But I'll show you his obituary. He was an insurance official, I believe. But, you know, John P.E. Brown was saying here to you, right, you see on the screen, we're glad to learn through Father Felix Morlion of your acceptance of our invitation to speak at the first American Agape meeting on April 1st, 1963. Okay, this is the 9th Agape sponsored by Pro-Dio. It is led by the Jesuit priest, His Eminence Agustino Bay, S.J., the confessor to Hitler's Pope Pius XII. Okay, but I'll show you John P.E. Brown's obituary here. You see his signature right here. I have this saved here on my... So here's John P.E. Brown. He died in 1990. You see here, John P.E. Brown was a retired vice president of the American Arbitration Association. Died Thursday at his home, 78 years old. Graduate of Ithaca College. He was executive secretary of the New York Kiwanis Club for 7 years, from 1940 to 47, where he joined Shenley International as assistant to the president. He moved to the arbitration group 5 years later to direct its public relations, serving until 1977. Former youth director of the Democratic National Committee and a president of the New York City Young Democrats. So this John P. Brown's connected to the insurance world and the Democratic Party. You see here, John P. Brown, long active in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York. In retirement, he served as financial consultant to St. Patrick's Cathedral. That's the spiritual home of the NYPD, according to Archbishop Dolan, and conducted its annual appeal. He was a Knight of the Holy Sepulchre. That's John P.E. Brown right there. He's on the board of Morlion's organization. Let me see here. Who is this guy here? Give me a second. And I'll show you Malcolm Wilson's New York Times obituary. There's the digitization on Frank Folsom's New York Times obituary. There's some errors on this with the digitization of his grammar, but here Frank Folsom, head of RCA during early rise of TV. He died in 1970. Frank Folsom was on the board of Felix Morlion's organization. He was president of Radio Corporation of America. This guy's actually credited with expanding the TV industry into the mass communication system it is now. Including his business interests, he was the director of several corporations. Mr. Folsom is one of the nation's leading Roman Catholic laymen and served as a permanent representative to the Holy See to the International Atomic Energy Agency at Geneva. Frank Folsom served alongside Theodore Hesburgh, Father SR-71 Hesburgh. Father Hesburgh, the Catholic priest, was on the board of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was on the board of the Chase Manhattan Bank, and Teddy Hesburgh was on the board of the Rockefeller Foundation. Pretty worldly interest for a priest, I would say. But you see, during World War II, Frank Folsom served as the chief Navy procurement. That means he was in charge of all the allocation of the funds for the Navy. That's what that means. Okay, but you see here, I'm going to show you Frank Folsom. This guy was not like this guy was plugged in. You see here, he was given honorary degree by University of Notre Dame. That's, predictable. Notre Dame, Frank Folsom was also given the Lattery Medal at Notre Dame. But look at this, in 1952, Radio Corporation of America established a Frank Folsom Scholarship at Catholic Notre Dame for undergraduates majoring in the pure sciences. Mr. Folsom was a papal chamberlain of the Cape and Sword, a Knight of the Grand Cross, and a Knight of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. He was a trustee of the Catholic Charities of New York and a Catholic Relief Services. Catholic Relief Services got like $500 million. They get like $500 million every year in taxpayer dollars. As well, Frank Folsom was a trustee of the National Jewish Hospital at Denver. And look at this, in 1968, Pope Paul VI was one of the main guys who actually founded Pro-Dio with Father Felix Morlion back in 1941. Pope Paul VI appointed Mr. Folsom an honorary consultor to the State of the Vatican City, the only so American honor. Yeah. So this guy was very, very prominent. This guy was also on the board of Coca-Cola as well. Let me see here. He also joined Montgomery Ward and Co. This guy here, he became one of the closest friends of Donald M. Nelson, who was the chair of the War Production Board. And look, in Donald M. Nelson, the chair of the War Production Board, called on the Papal Knight Jesuit-trained Bohemian Club member Frank Folsom to serve as his deputy for procurement. So this guy, Frank Folsom, was actually like the real guy in charge of the War Production Board during World War II. Yeah, I'll show you a photo of him. You can see a photo of Frank Folsom with President Truman's daughter also. And, you can see right on his Wikipedia, like was an electronics company executive and a permanent representative to the Vatican. Graduated from Catholic Manhattan College, Jesuit Fordham, and Jesuit University of San Francisco. You see right here. He was also served as director at Coke, John McGuire Company, NBC, General Cable Corporation, RCA Commons, Crown Cork and Seal, Tishman International, and served as representative of the Holy See to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Frank Folsom was a member at Augusta National Golf Club. That's where the Masters is played every year. That's very interesting. Frank Folsom was also a member of the Bohemia Club, the Pilgrims of the United States, and the Catholic Fraternity of the KOHV in Austria. This guy was very plugged in. Frank Folsom was also a member of the Everglades Club, the most exclusive social club in Palm Beach, Florida. Pretty aristocratic. Okay. But I'll show you this guy's picture. You can see a few on the internet. There he is right here. There he is with Margaret Truman, signing making a recording deal, making a contract with the Radio Corporation of America. That's Frank Folsom right here. Okay, and you can see Frank Folsom right here on the list. He's right above James A. Farley. Yeah, actually, James A. Farley was a Knight of Malta. It says it right on his Wikipedia. This guy got Roosevelt elected. He was the former chair of the DNC. So John P.E. Brown was another connection to the DNC that Morlion had. Right here, he was a Knight of Malta, business executive. He was the campaign manager for the Papal Chamberlain Knight of Columbus, Knight of Malta, Papal Cape and Sword, Alfred Emanuel Smith. Alfred E. Smith was also a Supreme Knight of Supreme Order of Christ. They stopped doing that award in like the 60s. Nicholas Frederick Brady was the Supreme Order of Christ alongside Alfred E. Smith and the Catholic Nazi lover Konrad Adenauer, the Chancellor of West Germany. You see here, Farley helped normalize diplomatic relations with the Holy See, and in 1933 he was the first high-ranking government official to travel to Rome, where he had audience with Pope Pius XI. And yeah, I put this on myarchive.org, but you can read his. I recommend you read James Farley's autobiography, the Jim Farley S. Story. I also recommend you read the book by Thomas Pendergrast, A History of Coca-Cola. I put that For God, Country, and Coke. That's on my archive.org page. But James Farley was the head of Coke for 30 years, and this guy was touring all the dictators of the world, getting Coke into all these different fascist police states. And James Farley also got coke into the Soviet Union while supposedly being an anti-communist because it's all a Jesuitical mirage. Lay Jesuit Dominican Father Felix Morlion was trying to get the Vatican closer with the Soviet Union, and James Farley is on Morlion's board of directors. So, you know, it all kind of adds up. Here's James Farley right here. Okay. I'll show you this guy here, Thomas Bata. This guy was known as like one of the shoemakers of the world, or like the most prominent shoemakers. Yeah, his nickname was the shoemaker to the world. It's Thomas J. Bata. He ran the Bata Shoe Company for 40 years during World War I. It even says right on his Wikipedia that the Bata Company was faced with a serious dilemma. Mussolini needed boots. And what did they do? They gave the fascist Italians their boots. And he also funded the fascist Nazis as well. Yeah, the Bata Shoe Corporation. Yeah, actually, Bata was invested with an Order of Canada. That's interesting. He got a bunch of honorary degrees from Canadian universities. That's interesting. He was the former director of IBM Canada. That's interesting. Actually, I found an IBM connection to Morlion's group. That was in the article. I'll link this. I put this on my archive.org page. I translated it from French, but this is a journal article done in the Auberg French Journal of American Studies titled A Philosophy of Democracy Under God, C.D. Jackson, Henry Luce, and the Pro-Dale Movement. But hey, what's up, guys? Just to clear, you guys. Can you guys see my my screen? Just let me know if you can. Yeah, just look at something. The Rothschild family. Yep, the Rothschild, and this was in the. You can still find this online. Jewish Encyclopedia. Oh, it's spelled encyclopedia wrong. And this is still on the internet. Rothschild. And he says here, like in the 1930s, like Abraham had, writes about this in the Vatican and world politics. The Rothschilds did float some loans to the papacy in the 1830s. But you look at this right here. This is from the Jewish Encyclopedia, the initial 12 volumes. But they say it is a somewhat curious sequel to attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds, that at the present time the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. The latter, when it says the latter, it would be referring here to the Rothschilds. So, knowing that, this translates to the Rothschilds are the guardians of the papal treasure. The Rothschilds are very powerful, but they're like Mayor Amschel Rothschild, the founder of the banking family, was a Knight of Malta. You can see a photo of him with his Maltese cross on. Where is this? This article here talks about some of the members of. Okay, so here. So when the author says the CIP, that's the abbreviation for Morlion's American subsidiary. You can see right here. The American Council for International Promotion of Democracy Under God is the CIP Incorporated. Okay. But there's some interesting names that this French article claims. So this Gerard L. Carroll. So I found this Gerard L. Carroll was of the Michael P. Grace II Trust, a small Catholic foundation. And Gerard L. Carroll was also president of the steering committee of the Catholic Interracial Council of New York. And you can see Gerard L. Carroll. His name pops up right here. Actually, I found Gerard L. Carroll's name on a Yale University book that was published. It was like the collective writings of Thomas More, the patron saint of lawyers. Let me see. It was a book published by Yale on Thomas More. Oh, you can get it on you can get it on archive.org. Oh, you could it's for borrow. Yeah, right here. This is where the name comes up. This Yale edition of the writing of the Mass Inquisitor, Sir Thomas More, who had a Jesuit as a grandson, Father Henry More, who lived up to him in his murderous record. You see here, this was the Sir Thomas More Project at Yale University, who, under the auspices of Gerald L. Carroll, of the Michael Grace II Trust and the Catholic Interracial Council, and Gerard L. Carroll is on Morlion's board right here. And where did that go? Okay, here. I covered Alan Struck, a Jew, was on the board of Morlion's group. We see here in November 1962 to Jackson, C.D. Jackson overwhelmed. Let me see here. This is cool. Not all the grammar is good because this is translated from French. So it says Jackson overwhelmed asked Henry Luce to reshuffle the presidency of the council to Knight of Malta J. Peter Grace. Well, that's fitting. And the vice presidencies to Paul Felix Warburg and Albrecht M. Lederer, who is, and this is the only information I could find on this Albrecht M. Lederer. Albrecht M. Lederer was a consultant and president of the International Committee of the Scientific Organization. That's an interesting connection there. But here's Albrecht Lederer. You can see his name. Where was that here? A.M. Lederer, right here. Below Eric Johnson of the Motion Picture Association. And above Skull and Bonesman Henry Luce. There's A.M. Lederer. Okay, we're going back here. There's some other interesting, really information. So, prestigious business executives join the CIP's board of directors, demonstrating its strength. You have Marcel Rand, who is affiliated with the Remington Rand Company. You can see Marcel Rand from Remington Rand Company right here. Here's Marcel Rand. Right above Harold Francis Smitty. I covered in the first video I did on Morlion, I showed a picture of this guy. Harold Francis Smitty was the president of General Electric. Marcel Rand was from Remington Rand. And this is significant because, guys, in the same batch of documents, Father Morlion is bragging about laundering billions of dollars through the Inter-American Development Bank. You can see all these prominent business guys that are affiliated with this group is where Morlion's getting his money from, or was getting his money from. And Pro-Dio has merged into the school with the abbreviation LUISS, L-U-I-S-S. It's a new CIA training post out in Rome that pumps out all sorts of diplomats, and they have lots of TED Talks there. Okay, so you see here Marcel Rand of Remington Rand. Interestingly, this name wasn't on the particular list. This guy must have joined the board earlier or at a later time. This author says Jay Bolton of Standard Oil was affiliated with Morlion's group. I covered James Farley of Coca-Cola International Corp. is affiliated with Morlion's group. I covered John Bugis, the vice president and FBI agent vice president of Ford Motor Company. This Arthur Watson, the president of IBM World Trade Corp, was connected with Morlion's group. This is actually, you know what? Let me give me a second. I'm just going to read you. I put this in the Dollar in the Vatican preface. You can see. Let me see if. Yeah, I'm doing a screen share and forgot my screen was up. Yeah, but this is from the preface I wrote. But I found an interesting quote from Donald Wetzel, who is the guy who actually patented the automatic teller machine back in the 60s. And Donald Wetzel was working at IBM, but he literally says that IBM, like the president of IBM, or like his instructor at the Jesuit school was a recruiter at IBM and got him the job at IBM. He literally says that. You can find this interview on the internet. Yeah, but this was this is page 49 of the preface I wrote. But yeah, so I write here, 1937, the chairman CEO of IBM, Thomas J. Watson, was awarded the Order of the German Eagle by Adolf Hitler. So this Arthur Watson is doubtlessly a descendant of Thomas Watson, who was awarded by Adolf Hitler. Yeah, but Thomas J. Watson was awarded by the Order of the German Eagle by Adolf Hitler. Donald Wetzel, that's his name, Donald Wetzel, said in an interview with Dr. David K. Allison of the National Museum of American History on September 21st, 1995, that, quote, this is from Jesuit-trained Donald Wetzel, the patenter of the ATM. This is Wetzel speaking, quote, well, the dean of our business school at Loyola, whom I got to know fairly well, recruited, in a sense, for IBM, and he knew a lot of people at IBM, and he helped me get the interview at IBM. And from there, I was able to get the job with his recommendation, I'm sure. So that made it easier for me, and that's really the reason I went to work for IBM. It turned out, I think, it was a good decision on my part, and I hope it was for them also. Like, that's right in your face. Like, he's saying, like, the only reason he got his job at IBM, Donald Wetzel, is because his instructor at Jesuit Loyola acted as a recruiter for IBM. You know, IBM is another. If you read Anthony Sutton's book, Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development, IBM was also really big into the Soviet Union. And there was a book published recently called IBM and the Holocaust, which goes into how IBM was, you know, the Nazis were using IBM technology to keep tabs on inmates in the concentration camps. But look, you know, David Rockefeller is reportedly affiliated with this group, the American Council of Promotion of Democracy Under God. This is the group's name here, the American Council for International Promotion of Democracy Under God. So, you know, David Rockefeller is reportedly to have been connected to this group. I'm sure you could find other sources out there that validate the claim. But this French journal is naming David Rockefeller. You know, David Rockefeller was on the Jeffrey Epstein list. This guy was, you know, the ultimate middleman. He took Jesuit-trained Opus Dei Knight of Malta, Francis X. Stankard, with him to tour China when Chase Manhattan Bank was opening up in China in the mid-'70s. You see here, Eric Johnston, I covered, was president of the Motion Picture Association of America. He was on the Prodeo subsidiary. So there's just a few others that, you know, other interesting connections. There's a few other ones I haven't covered. Edward J. Martola. I'll show this guy. This guy's interesting here. This guy was the president of Pace University, and Pace University is secular, or it's private, but it's a private. It doesn't. I don't believe it has a religious affiliation. But you see here, Edward J. Martola is American academician and, quote, education executive, served as president of New York's Pace University. He was on the board of Morlion's group. You see Edward Martola, president of Secular Pace, graduated from Jesuit Regis High School and then went to Jesuit Fordham University. And this is what I thought was crazy here. The Jesuit priest Robert Ignatius Gannon, who literally said that the FBI and Fordham have the same ideas. He says that's quoted in Steve Rossum's book, The FBI and the Catholic Church. Robert Ignatius Gannon, Jesuit president of Fordham from 1936 to 1949, recollected being advised, quote, that unless you return your collar around, you'll never become president of Fordham, but you might at Pace. That's what Cardinal Spellman's superior, Robert Ignatius Gannon, told Edward J. Martola. And he ended up actually becoming a president of Pace, which is, you know, pretty funny. You know, this guy was very involved in ecumenism also. He was appointed by President Carter to the National Advisory Council on Adult Education. That's interesting there. So this guy, you know, is involved, you know, in a fair bit. It's more on the education side of the world. He expanded Pace University quite a bit. This was an interesting connection to Morlion's group. I think you can see a photo of this guy on the internet. But a lot of these guys, you can see photos of them if you look them up. I just don't want the video to run on too long, so I don't want to show all the photos. That's Edward J. Martola. David Danzig. Let's see here. This guy I know was... Some of these guys were hard to find. Okay, so this was David Danzig's obituary. He died in 1969. He was an intergroup relations expert, which is interesting. So David Danzig, an internationally known authority on intergroup relations and associate professor of social work at Columbia University, died at 58. So Morlion, another connection from Morlion to the quote secular education. There's a lot of connections to secular universities, the Morlion's intelligence group. Here, David Danzig headed the interracial relations area at Columbia and was staff member of the American Jewish Committee since 1947. This guy seems to be another Jew in Morlion's group as well. He served as the AJ Committee as program director starting in 1947. He became associate director in 1963. He served as a consultant on intergroup relations to the White House Conference on Civil Rights, which was led by Catholic priest Father Teddy Hesburgh. In the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity, the Community Relations Service of the U.S. Department of Justice. David Danzig served at the U.S. Conference of Mayors and was Race Relations Commission of the United Kingdom. He served on that commission. From 1942 to 1946, David Danzig was National Program Director of the United Service Organization. His writings appeared in a number of national magazines, including Commentary. Commentary was founded by the Jew David Struck, who was on the board of Morlion's organization. Oh, the Jew David Danzig wrote for Jesuit America magazine and Catholic Commonwealth magazine. You look at that. So this guy's another interesting name on the Morlion board, David Danzig. You can see him right here. Right below him is George DeLuca. I know I've heard this guy's name somewhere. I think he was like a deputy governor in New York. George, how do you spell that? Oh, 1C. Yeah, George DeLuca was an American lawyer, banker, politician. He was lieutenant governor of New York from 1955 to 1958. Look at that. So another connection. This guy was elected on the governor ticket with Skull and Bonesman Averell Harriman. Averell Harriman was one of this guy was very, very powerful. U.S. ambassador to Soviet Russia, U.S. ambassador to Britain. Jesuit trained Vernon Walters was one of Averell Harriman's advisors. When Averell Harriman was coming up the ranks, they had a Jesuit trained Knight of Malta, Vernon Walters, to make sure Averell Harriman knew the ropes of treason very well. George DeLuca was very interesting. He was vice president of the Commercial Bank of America, elected in 1959. So he was vice president of the Commercial Bank of America when he was on Morlion's board here. See, he's Alta Mater City College of New York, Columbia. He was a Bronx prosecutor as well. Looks like that's his New York Times obituary. This guy was the lieutenant governor. Averell Harriman's lieutenant governor was on Morlion's board. So this is a very intriguing group. That's why I wanted to make this video. Looks like doesn't look like there's any photos of them though. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of them are hard to find. But let me see if I can. So I'll show you Lillian Gilbreth. I'll show you this one here. Lillian Gilbreth was one of Lillian Moeller Gilbreth. This lady was on Father Felix Morlion's intelligence, or on Morlion's Prodeo subsidiary. She's known. Her and her husband Frank Gilbreth was apparently known as efficiency experts, who contributed to the study of industrial engineering, especially in the areas of motion study and human factors. It says Gilbreth was one of the first female engineers to earn a PhD. Is considered to be the first industrial organizational psychologist. There's some very prominent people, who are connected to this group. Look at all these honorary degrees. Whoa. Interesting here. Look at all these medals. Memberships of the British Women's Engineering Society, American Society of Mechanical Engineers, the Gilbreth Medal. You see here. They got the U.S. Postal Service has stamps. Look at this, issued stamps in her honor. So this is first woman to receive the Hoover Medal, first woman elected to National Academy of Engineering. So this lady was pretty prominent. Here are her books here. Like I said, this is interesting because, in this current paradigm, the reason that the U.S. has lost like 10 million manufacturing jobs since the 70s is the psychopathic need for increasing shareholder profit. It's all about efficiency. Who cares about, ethics? We'll go, move the factory over to Indonesia or Malaysia, pay some like 13-year-old kid like $3 a day to do the same job, and now we're saving money. Like these greedy, Vatican-controlled capitalists like salivate to cut their labor costs. Like they salivate to cut labor costs. Yeah. It's interesting that this woman, Lillian Gilbreth, was all about reducing, quote, reducing waste, which would be labor costs. And she would be all about replacing her workers with machines. Let me see if there's any others here that I want to cover. Here you see Harold Francis Smitty. You can look him up. He was General Electric. Harold Smitty. He was American engineer, business manager, management and consultant, known as the 17th president of General Electric. He received the Henry Lawrence Gantt Medal, just like Lillian Gilbreth, which is given by the American Management Association. But this guy was on Morlion's board as well, 17th president of General Electric. So you can see that this was a very, far-reaching group that Father Felix Morlion had. Edward L. Stein. Let me see if I can find this guy here. This guy looks Jewish. Edward L. Stein. Let me see. Edward L. Steininger. Oh, this guy was oh wow, this guy was Sinclair Oil. Wow. Yeah, this guy was a Sinclair Oil company. This company, Edward, obviously, Robert Sinclair is a good Roman Catholic, deeply implemented in the Teapot Dome scandal with his fellow Catholic papal knight, Ed Doheny, who was completely left off the hook, probably because he had a Jesuit-trained lawyer. His lawyer, Hogan, I think it was Frank Hogan, I believe was Doheny's lawyer. His last name was Hogan, Frank or Ed Hogan. But look at this. But this name here, Edward L. Steilinger, was president of Sinclair Oil. He became president of Sinclair Oil in 1958. Look, and it was all about reducing costs. Probably, letting off a whole bunch of workers at Sinclair Oil and replacing them with mechanized labor. That's probably what that was. Look at this. So this guy was literally the president of Sinclair Oil. Like, are you kidding me? And this guy was on Morlion's group. Yeah, this is coming from their website. This is his name, Edward L. Steininger. Probably, I assume this guy is Jewish, but he's on Morlion's board. He's president of Sinclair Oil, who was founded by a Roman Catholic, Edward Sinclair. Edward Sinclair's wife was like a papal dame. But that's this guy's name here, Edward L. Steininger, right here. Let's see if we can find George S. Sperity. George S. Sperity. Okay, this guy was an Italian-American inventor. Oh yeah, I came across this guy's page before. Yeah, this guy, George S. Sperity. This guy was an Italian-American inventor. This guy invented the Sperry ultraviolet lamp, Aspercream for pain relief, and the KVA power meter. Graduated from the University of Cincinnati. And look, this was crazy here. In 1935, in collaboration with the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, he supposedly received 127 patents for freezing orange juice concentrate. Like, why is the Archdiocese of Cincinnati doing research into orange juice concentrate? I thought that was, odd to say the least. And these here at Sperity was later renamed the Institutum as the St. Thomas Institute for Advanced Studies. And that is, where was this here? The Institutum. I'm not sure what school this is referring to here. The Wikipedia page doesn't really mention what school it's referring to. Probably a school at the University of Cincinnati, the research laboratory. So interesting. So this guy, was very involved in quote unquote scientific exploration. This George Sperti, you see here, he's working with the Archdiocese of Cincinnati for freezing orange juice concentrate. He was on Morlion's list. I mentioned Marcel Randa. This guy here I found was really hard to find. Enrico Pavia. I don't know if it'll. I'll see if I can find him, but this guy seems to be hard to find. Enrico. Oh, this might be a memorial to him on Pinterest. Enrico, oh, that's in Pavia, Italy. Enrico Pavia. American Council. Let's just see if I can find this guy quick. American Council for the International Promotion. Oh, it looks like Enrico Pavia is mentioned here. Here's some more documents, it looks like, from Pro-Dio and this Ninth Brotherhood banquet. Oh, wait, these are some of the ones I have here. Looks like Pavia is mentioned. Just want to see if it gives his occupation. Okay, looks like I found. Okay, this is listing his board of directors. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think I can. I don't want the video to run on too long. But I'm sure you could find out who this Enrico Pavia is, but he's kind of a mystery at the moment. I can't find anything on him. Yeah, I think I covered pretty much. I think everyone on the list is James N. Hoey. Was kind of mysterious too. Jane M. Hoey. Oh, she looks like she was an author. She's a social worker, a welfare administrator, and a government official. It looks like. Oh, an encyclopedia of social work. Okay, so here's another one. So this is definitely the girl on Morlion's list. She died in 1968. She helped establish and enforce standards in public welfare administration. Probably, giving the current system where the U.S. federal government gives billions of dollars to Catholic charities and Catholic relief services and all sorts of Catholic schools and programs and Catholic orphanages, Catholic lawyer guilds, Catholic refugee services, you name it. The federal government's paying for all of it. James Hoey maybe had a part to play in that. She was on Father Felix Morlion's board of directors, and she served as president of the National Conference of Social Work. So that's another interesting connection there to Jane M. Hoey. And you can see her name, where is it? Right here. Right here, right below the president of the Knights of Malta, J. Peter Grace, and C.D. Jackson, the president of the American wing of the Bilderberg Group and the CIA's Inside Man at Time Magazine. Not bad company for her. And you see her Reverend Felix A. Morlion, you can see right here. This is really intriguing because this is the same batch of documents. You can read these for yourself. I recommend you do, of the program to launder billions of dollars to the Inter-American Development Bank. That's sent in this letter here by Great Upton to Walter Rostow. And here's Felix Morlion replying to Great Upton, but this is the Upton letter to Walter Rostow here. See R.E. Father Morlion and Program of Catholic Church for Indoctrination of Latin American Priests and Divulgation of Principles of U.S. Free Enterprise System. And here's another, this banker here, this is for Thomas C. Mann, the Undersecretary for Economic Affairs, wrote to Great Upton. I don't think I've read this on my channel before. I'll read this before I go. This Graydon is Grayton Upton of the Inter-American Development Bank, which was laundering billions of dollars. For Felix Morlion, we've seen, looking at who is affiliated with Morlion's group, that there's a pretty financially connected group of businessmen connected to Father Felix Morlion, coming from all religious backgrounds. Okay, we see here, Dear Grayton, from Thomas C. Mann, Undersecretary for Economic Affairs. Thank you for your letter on April 11th, in which you gave us more information about Father Morlion's proposal. We are trying to analyze his program to determine whether it is something we should support, and if so, how. Father Morlion has already spoken at some length with George Lister, our bureau specialist in such projects. As a second step, we are arranging for Father Morlion to talk with Levio V. Sanchez, Director of the Office of Institutional Development. Oh, sounds pretty Catholic, eh? Levio V. Sanchez, guarantee he's a Catholic. Levio V. Sanchez, Director of the Office of Institutional Development in our Inter-America Bureau. They were unsuccessful in efforts to get together yesterday and are hopeful that they can meet next week. We appreciate Father Morlion's anxiety to get his program moving, but as I am sure you will understand, the department wants to make certain that the nature and extent of its possible involvement is fully understood. We will keep you informed on further development. With best regards, sincerely yours, Thomas C. Mann, Undersecretary for Economic Affairs. Let's see if I can pull up this guy's letter here, who is writing about Morlion. Thomas C. Mann, here he is right here. He's the U.S. diplomat and specialized in Latin American affairs. This guy penned the Mann Doctrine. That's interesting. He was a spokesman for the Automobile Manufacturers Association. The Morlion connections, are pretty. This guy supposedly is Southern Baptist. See, Morlion was controlling, all these, apostate, Protestant and Jews are controlled by the Catholic Church. This Morlion group, proves that pretty evidently. Look, and Thomas C. Mann opposed Arbenz reform law, and he wanted the CIA to invade in 1954. Very predictable. Okay, but yeah, I think that's all for this one. I'm gonna see if hey guys, how's it going? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Just look at some of the comments. Yeah, absolutely. The most powerful families in the world are the Roman black nobility families. You can see there's a Colonna that's a high-level official at General Electric. What was his first name? Paul Colonna. Yeah, this Colonna is the same Colonna family that had many popes. Oh, look, I have to add this guy into my Lockheed Martin post. Paul Colonna is now heading the Lockheed Martin management subsidiary. That's very fitting. But you see Colonna, this is a papal black nobility family. And you see Colonna went to Catholic Villanova as well. Obviously, this guy's going to be educated by Catholics. He comes from a papal nobility family. The papal nobilities are still here. There was a Medici who was the dictator of Brazil in the 70s, a brutal military authoritarian ruler, killed thousands of his own people, sold out Brazil to foreign corporations. That's a good old Emilio Medici. You see Brazilian military junta. There he is with papal puppet Richard Nixon. Right there, who had a Jesuit priest, John McLaughlin, as a speechwriter. And you see here, and if you go, so here's another one showing that these families are still intact. If you go to Ecuador, there's a Rodrigo. Oh, I don't know why Bing isn't finding that. I don't like Bing really as a search engine. I gotta find a better alternative to Google. Rodrigo. Ecuador. Yeah, right here. Rodrigo Borja Ceballos was president of Ecuador from 1998 to 1992. See the last name Borgia? Goes back to the Borgia crime family from the 1500s. Legendary Borgia crime family. He spent time with U.S. President George H.W. Bush, who went to Catholic Notre Dame University more than any other U.S. president in history. That's fitting. It is claimed that he is a direct descendant of Pope Alexander VI through his son Giovanni Borgia, second Duke. Look at that. The president of Ecuador in the 80s is a direct descendant of Pope Alexander VI, one of the most monstrous popes in history. So like, these families, are still intact. But yeah, let me see here. Yeah, I think I'm going to call it there, guys. Peace and love, everyone, and I'll catch you on the next video. Unmasked. Oh, is it not on, is it not on Netflix, Blue Blood? Let me see, this is a website I use. Footlocker. This is the website I like to use for watching free movies and stuff. Oh. It's called Putlockers. It looks like they still got Borgia season 1 at least. I'm sure on some of these, I know a lot of these Putlocker websites are going down. People are making like copies of a Putlocker site, kind of like Pirate Bay. But you can find maybe some of the Borgias on here, and I recommend torrenting. I'm sure there may be some torrents, but is it off Netflix? I know it was on Netflix for a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if they took it off Romeflix. And one thing I noticed about Netflix, though, in the documentary they did on the HSBC banking scandal in 2000, and like a few years ago, it came out HSBC was laundering billions of dollars for the Mexican Sinaloa drug cartels, but they very carefully avoided that Roman Catholic James Comey was a high-level director at HSBC while they were laundering money for the Mexican drug cartel, and then he became the head of the Federal Bureau of Inquisition, more commonly known as the FBI, as being devout Roman Catholic James Comey. And you had the Papal Knight, let me get his full name, Stedzinski, the Knight of St. Sylvester, currently on the Blackstone Group. You had John Stedzinski, a Papal Knight, currently Vice Chairman of Investor Relations at Blackstone, where he holds special responsibility for sovereign and institutional investor relationships. Is a Knight of Saint Sylvester, Knight of Order of Saint Gregory the Great, and this Papal Knight John Stedzinski was a high-level official at HSBC from 2003 to 2006, the thick of the years where the drug scandal, was blowing up with HSBC. So that was on Dirty Money, that documentary on HSBC, but there's just some big, critical facts that they were hiding in that documentary. But yeah, I think that's it for this one, YouTube. I'm glad the screen share is fixed. If you are going to, now that Google Hangouts on Air is finished, I recommend you switch over to this StreamYard. It seems very similar to the original Hangouts on Air, and I think I've learned the ropes of the software layout. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Peace and love, and I'll catch you on the next one.